Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hooga With It. Today I am doing part 2 of my October wrap-up. The beginning of October was a really crappy start to my reading month. I'm going to link that somewhere because I was so disappointed in so many of the books that I was reading that I kind of felt like, is October doomed? Is it doomed? And I'm happy to report that it is not doomed at all. In the last half of October, I think I read 4 books that are 5-star reads for me. So this is going to be just like a very joyous video. So let's get into it. Okay, so the plan is to go from least favorite-ish to most favorite. And the least favorite was 3 stars, so not bad at all, right? So first I wanted to talk to you about Stiff by Mary Roach. This is nonfiction. I read a lot of nonfiction in October, even though it's nonfiction November. I don't know, I'm always early for everything. And I also think I'm realizing in myself that a lot of the nonfiction on my shelves and the nonfiction that I'm interested in are kind of morbid. I don't know what that's about. Lots of true crime. This book is about dead bodies. So first of all, I have to say that Mary Roach does her homework. She is such a great researcher. I definitely want to go ahead and read more from her. Now, the reason that I give this 3 stars is really more my reaction to it. I thought that this was going to be a different book. And it just didn't satisfy the questions that I have. So I thought I was picking up a book about human bodies after we're dead. Like, just what happens to us after we're dead. How long does it take for us to decompose? Like, all of that kind of stuff. That's what I thought we were going into. But this is truly about human bodies and when people, donate their bodies to science and what happens to those bodies, which I think is absolutely wonderful that people do that. So it was very much a different book than I thought it was going to be. Super interesting. Still very interesting, but I had a hankering for a totally different book. Another issue that I really dealt with in this was there was a lot of references to what science did to animals when human bodies weren't available. And sometimes they'd be talking about what they would do to live animals. And that was really hard for me to read. And it's also something that I didn't sign up for at all. Like, I didn't sign up for that. And it was every single chapter had something about, and then they did this to this animal. And I'm like, no, I just save all the animals. Why aren't we just doing stuff on dead bodies? I really struggled with that. So I can't keep this on my shelves because it just doesn't reflect me. No. But it was very, very well researched. I do recommend it. If you are someone who is interested in what happens to human bodies that are donated to science, I mean, fascinating stuff. Humans, after they're dead, have saved so many lives. For airbags alone, for every cadaver used to test and develop airbags, 147 lives are saved. So that is really fascinating. It's just, yeah, it wasn't for me. It wasn't the book I was expecting. So 3 stars, but not bad. Okay, moving on. We're moving straight into 5-star reads now. Like, that was a good end of my reading month. I'm just so happy. And this book is a book that I received from Macmillan UK. I desperately needed to read this book because of Leanne from Literary Diversions. Girl, you got me hooked into Dead Girls. It was so worth it. It was worth the wait because I have been looking for this book for a long time. And I loved this book. Dead Girls is about a young girl named Tara, and her best friend Billy and her are just like, just so close. They're 11 years old. They're, when you're that age, your best friend is like your everything in life. Well, Billy is her everything until Billy is murdered, and Tara decides that she wants to exact revenge on the murderer. She wants to find the murderer, and she wants them to pay for what they've done. And this is one of the most refreshing thrillers I've read in a long time. Just like Final Girls was refreshing to me in terms of like the homage to the horror movie, and I just loved that. This was refreshing because it's very feminist and wonderful. A lot of thrillers revolve around a girl or a woman having something traumatic happen to her, and she's a victim of male violence, which is, I mean, that is definitely everywhere in the world. That happens more than it should, that's for sure. So a lot of thrillers revolve around that kind of storyline. And again, we are seeing that here because, you know, Billy, her best friend, was murdered. You're trying to find out who did it. But what's refreshing is that Tara is like, no, that's not happening to my best friend without, you know, some major consequences. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And I loved that. It's totally a revenge story that is unexpected. This kind of felt like reading The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna Cannon. Not as well written. That book is like kind of in its own little world because it's just so beautifully written. But the premise of two little girls that are, you know, joined at the hip and just love each other so much, and solving a mystery. There's just something about the two that really reminded me of one another. Oh, but what I really loved about this was its feminist slant. Because she's 11 years old in this book, you're understanding the male gaze from her eyes, and she's coming into her own, and she's learning about sexuality and her own sexuality and how that can be a dangerous thing. It shouldn't be a dangerous thing. She is learning about men and how some men don't have very good intentions whatsoever, and how just being pretty can make you a victim or make you stand out. And she's learning about the danger of becoming a woman. She doesn't understand it, rightly so, and she is not going to put up with it either. It was so good. I really liked it. The ending was honestly shocking to me. I don't know why I was shocked by the ending, but I really was. And I just loved it. I can't recommend this enough. So, awesome thriller. Also, it's got a little bit of horror in it. I should say that. There's a bit of horror in there too. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint that book. But, oh, so good. Okay. Next is a book that will make you cry. Like, you're gonna cry. It's like 30 pages long, maybe less, and that is Sea Prayer by Khaled Hosseini. So he wrote The Kite Runner, and he's a very well-known author, and he wrote this book to honor and commemorate the lives of refugees. So the proceeds from this book is going to go to UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and to the Khaled Hosseini Foundation to help fund life-saving relief efforts to help refugees across the globe. And I mean, this book is really heartbreaking. It's about a man who is with his child. They're about to get on a boat to go to better places that are going to be safer for his family. And it's them waiting for the boat to arrive. And he is telling his child about his life growing up in Syria and how wonderful it was. And he's leaving his home behind and he doesn't know where he's going. I think this was inspired by it's so famous, the picture of that toddler who was found drowned as he was trying to cross. Um, it's I feel like that image is so ingrained into everyone's head for good reason, and it's shocking that we as the world haven't been as open, and it's just very shocking to me that people can be so harsh and yet like be like rah rah, we saved all sorts of people from hardships during World War II. Well, we're not doing that anymore, really. Canada is doing a fairly good job. We are letting in refugees from Syria, from all over the place, but a lot of places in the world aren't doing that, and could really step up to the plate. So anyway, this book, I don't know what I was thinking, because I picked up this book as I was getting ready for work. I'm like, I think I have a little bit of extra time. I'm going to read this book. So I read this immediately before I was putting on my makeup, and then I was just bawling my eyes out. And then I had to put on my makeup. It was a whole mess. So definitely go into this book knowing you're going to shed a few tears. But beautiful. I'm so happy to have that on my shelves. And I'm so happy that it was written. Very important. Okay, next we're moving on to a book that I just finished that I loved. It's The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. I finally read this. I mean, how long have I been talking to you guys about this book? I feel like it's been forever. I really do. And it's been on so many TBRs. I think it was on my summer TBR last year. And then I finally picked it up for the autumn readathon, and it did not disappoint, guys. This is my favorite ghost story ever. This gave me a lot of the feels of The Turn of the Screw. I felt unnerved the exact same way. And what I find fascinating about Sarah Waters and this writing is that I forgot that I was reading a book that was written like recently. She wrote this, I think 2008 or 2009. I really felt like I was reading a book that was written in the Victorian period, or like, you know, early 20th century period. Like it's written that well and that way, and you just get so immersed in the language. This is what I loved about this book. So much is going on other than a ghost story. This addresses the rise of the middle class and the fall of the upper class in England. During the war, post-war, you're following that, and you're watching a family who once was very, very rich, and now they live in this home that they no longer can afford. It's falling apart, and people at this house are getting really ill, and a doctor has to go and check on a bunch of people at this house, and he is the middle class, and he is the rise of the middle class. And it's about this clash in class, and it's also got a little bit of romance in here, which I found really disturbing. I don't know if anyone else who has read this also found the romance in here. I won't say between who, but I found it really disturbing. It made me really realize. I already knew, obviously everyone knows that women don't have a lot of choices in this time period. But the male in this romantic relationship seemed overly possessive, and there was one scene in particular that made me so worried for her. It was just, so you're watching this romance develop in this odd way, and you're looking at the class system, and then you get so involved in the characters and that plot line that you forget that there's a ghost, and then Waters will just throw in a horrifying scene. Like, some of these scenes, I was so scared that I would be looking around the room. Like, I had intended to read this for Autumn Cozy Reading Night, which was on November 2nd. I couldn't wait. Like, I needed to read this before. I couldn't wait, partly because I was addicted to the story, and also because Barry was going away. Like, Barry was going away to Boston, and I could not be reading this and be alone in my house, because those scenes are so scary to me. If you are someone who likes ghost stories, please pick this up, especially if you like historical fiction and ghost stories. I mean, this is gonna rock your world. If you like your horror more, I don't know, more realistic, more, man is attacking people or whatever, then this might not be for you. But it blew me away. It blew me away. I loved it. I'm so glad that I read that finally. Okay, so the last one I want to talk about also shocked me. It really shocked me. It's The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This is a nonfiction story about Jeanette Walls and her childhood. She was one of four or five kids, and she had very eccentric parents. You start out the book when she's an adult. She's living in New York City, and she is in a cab, and she passes by her mom digging through trash. Her mom is living in New York and is living on the street by choice. And she's kind of embarrassed by it. She also wants to help her mom, who really won't take any help. And then it kind of goes way back into her childhood. Some of the things that happened to her in her childhood were really horrendous. The living conditions themselves were outright dangerous. The neglect was really hard to read. As someone who wants to become a parent so desperately, the neglect, just, I didn't understand how a parent could do that to a child. And yet it's very weird, because I know that the parents of Jeanette Walls loved their children. They did love them. They just were honestly unfit parents. They put their children into so much danger. Like, so much danger. It was really shocking. The mother had this very strange relationship with death. When people in her family would die, she'd be like, oh, okay, moving on. Like, literally, there was like no mourning, none whatsoever. Just boom, moving on to whatever is next in her life. And was a very selfish individual that I could see. The father was an alcoholic. He was also like a big kid in a lot of ways, and was really self-centered in the idea of, like, he just knew how to like boost himself up, and so his kids grew up kind of thinking that he was like God in a way, and he was very much not God. He was very manipulative. He put his kids in so much danger. I don't know how she survived. Honestly, don't know how some of these kids survived, and I don't know how they became so normal. But yeah, fascinating. I listened to this on audiobook, and the audio was narrated by Jeanette Walls. It was fantastic. I so recommend listening to this one on audiobook. I would probably listen to it all over again, because just her life she's had many lives, and she endured so much as a kid that no kid should ever have to go through at all. So I so recommend this if you're looking for a good book for November nonfiction, or nonfiction November. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. One of my favorite books. I'm definitely going to be looking for more Jeanette Walls because I think she also wrote a story, a nonfiction story about her grandmother. Half Broke Horses. Am I right on that? I need to read that. I've seen that at charity shops before and stuff, and just kept thinking, well, I should read The Glass Castle first. And now I know basically anything by Jeanette Walls I'm going to be reading because wow. Wow. Wasn't that like the best end of a reading month ever? I don't think I've ever had that. I don't think I've ever had 4 5-star reads in one month. I don't know what November is going to bring because I feel like nothing can beat 4 5-star reads in a month. I don't know. I'm so happy that it ended up really well. Let me know in the comments below what the best book that you read in October was. Did you have a 5-star read? And if you did, let me know what it was. I hope you were doing well, and I'll talk with you soon. Okay, bye guys.